Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cut to the Chase Sports Podcast, where we bring a unique insight and analysis about your favorite sports, from the high school, collegiate, and professional levels. I'm your host, Chase Yantz, joined by a lot of people here tonight. So we got co-host Brady. How we doing?
Doing good, Chase. How are you? Excited to get to talking about some football here.
For sure. Definitely. I'm really excited about that, too. I'm doing pretty well. Matt, what's up?
I'm excited, man. I'm ready to go. But we've been looking forward to this for a couple weeks now. Here we go, man. We're on them.
Mm-hmm. And then we got our big guest down here, former Ohio State receivers coach and the man at Menace Sports Podcast, Zach Smith. Zach, how are we doing tonight?
Doing great, man. Excited to see what you guys want to talk about.
For sure. We appreciate you coming on, taking some of your time out of your day and everything. And we are looking forward to this one. But we'll kind of jump right into this with the first question. So you were a coach at Ohio State from 2011 through about 2017-18 season. What was the day in the life look like as an Ohio State coach at a prestigious Power 5 school throughout the entire day from start to finish? What did it look like?
It's everything's cyclical. It's all depends on what time of year it is, but typically in season is what people usually want to know about because it's just such a time commitment. I did the math on one of my early shows on my podcast, and I can't remember what it is. It's something absurd, like 140 hours or 120 hours in a week, because it truly is. I mean, you go like when the game's over Saturday, right? You start with Sunday, and you'll have breakfast with your family, and then you go to work. I mean, you're at work by 10 a.m. and you have to have your film graded. So there's all these windows throughout the week where it's like, yeah, you're at home, like you're with your family, but it's like, oh, by the way, while you're with your family for that 2 hours, you have to grade the game. So it's like, okay, I'm not really with my family, but I might be able to be at home and grading it. So you get into work at 10 a.m. and then you're there until late, 10 p.m., 10:30 p.m. on Sunday. And then that grind is really that Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday until practice. I mean, it's literally 5:45 in the morning until 10:30 at night, Monday, Tuesday. And then Wednesday, you get the night off after practice where you get to go home and be with your family. The only problem is because there's such a premium placed on recruiting, you really have to make recruiting calls all night long. You have to talk to recruits all Wednesday night. So you're with your family, but you're really in your office, in your house, making recruiting calls. Thursday similar to Wednesday, and then Friday is, home games. You'll get to take your kids to school and then go to work. If it's an away game because of travel time, you don't get to do that. You have to go in around 7 a.m. And then game day, you're tied up. And the problem at a place like Ohio State is you play so many more later games because you're a good football team. When I was at Marshall and Temple, we played a bunch of noon games. And so you're done at 4:30 and you have the whole evening with your family. You're Ohio State, you play Notre Dame at 7 p.m. That game's over at 11:30. You're not home till 1, and you got to flip around and come back Sunday morning. So it's definitely a grind. I think the hardest part is going from the season grind, and then it's refreshing because you get to go on the road recruiting for 2 weeks, and then bowl game, and then 3 more weeks. But you're just away from your family a ton. You just don't get to see your kids or your wife or anything when you're in it.
Right.
Full time. Yeah, you got it.
That's just so crazy because when your kids are growing up and stuff, you could miss the thought of just missing their first words or whatever. I'm not sure how old your kids were while you were at Ohio State or anything, but you miss a lot of these milestones and stuff, and it's just so time consuming.
You miss it all. I mean, you really do. And it's like anything else. There's benefits and there's negatives. And I mean, you'll never get to see your kid really play football. If he plays in a spring, summer sport, you might have a chance. Like baseball, you got a chance to go to some games.
Right.
And it's just, but on the other side of it, I mean, I have a 12-year-old right now, 10-year-old, 5-year-old, and a 1-year-old. So the 1-year-old wasn't even a thought back then.
Yeah.
But my 12-year-old, my oldest son, I mean, he got to do some of the coolest shit you've ever imagined. I mean, just going on the field after games, being on the sideline, going in the locker room. I mean, his friends are huge Buckeye fans, and this kid's like, what are you talking about? Like, those are my friends. Like, Braxton Miller is my friend. He doesn't know that, no, Braxton Miller is a superstar. He doesn't realize that because that's just some guy that my dad coaches, So, and then they get to go on bowl trips. Bowl trips are you can envision being a billionaire and planning a week vacation. That's what it is to these kids. I mean, they have hospitality suites where they get to walk in and it's just massive walls of candy, snacks. They get free cowboy boots at the Cotton Bowl. You know, you get all this stuff at the Fiesta Bowl. You're in Scottsdale and it's warm, and they have like all kinds of stuff for these kids. It's magical what they get to do. So there's so many benefits to it, but at the same time, I mean, it's tough. And luckily, I got fired in 2018. My son was, let's see, he was 8. My oldest was 8, about to be 9. And so I got to really flip a switch. And then all of a sudden I started coaching his travel baseball, coach my daughters. I just left my daughter's travel softball practice. Like, I'm just so much more involved now. It's cool to have lived both lives, I guess.
Right. You get the Pee-wee coach sense of it. And then you got the big time, like, everyone's watching it, millions of viewers, like it's on type of thing. Like, I can't even imagine being out there knowing that everyone is watching your every last move. And like, it's just the whole Ohio State fan base, which is insanely large, is just tuned in, and you're making all these like calls, and you're the one producing, you know, Michael Thomas, Terry McLaurin, and all these guys that all these fans know and love.
For sure. It was really cool. Last year I coached, I was the head coach of my son's 6th grade tackle football team. And I was trying not to coach. Like, you know, you can imagine as a kid growing up, like if your dad's a coach at Ohio State, like there's a lot of pressure on you to play football or be good. So I didn't want to make it worse. So I was just going to be a dad in the stands. And then they had the coach like quit like 3 days before the season, and no one else would step up and do it. So I kind of got thrust into it. It was the most fun year of football I've ever had. I mean, we were out here running this 6th grade league.
Oh man, what kind of offense did you guys run? If I could go into that,
I mean, we ran what we ran at Ohio State, but on a much.
Oh yeah. You got to throw something.
I mean, you know, there's things like little trinket plays, like tight end throwbacks and throwbacks to running backs, things like that you can run it once a season at Ohio State, because then they have it on film and they're coached up. It's 6th grade football. I can run that 3 times a game.
Right.
Like I'm running little stuff like that every game. We're doing rollout. We threw the ball a ton for 6th grade. It was a lot of fun. So it was a very youth version of what we did at Ohio State.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear, though, you know, just getting in dad mode and all that stuff. Then also having that side of things, as Brady said, having the best of both worlds in both ways, and having, you know, when you can have your kids involved, it makes it that much better and all. But yeah, Matt, I'll throw it down to you for question 2.
Yeah. All right. So first thing, in terms of recruiting, a couple parts to this question. First part, you know, how taxing is it on you as a coach daily in terms of, you know, phone calls, text messages, constant. But the second part of the question, I want to know your biggest miss while recruiting at Ohio State in terms of the guy you guys were going hard as hell after, the one you wanted bad, and then it ended up going to Michigan, Alabama, Florida State, Clemson, somebody, and ended up really blowing up and being huge. So I really want to know the biggest miss you had.
Well, so recruiting is all about effort. I mean, it's deeper than that. You got to have charisma. You got to have personable skills. You got to be able to build relationships, but you really got to sink an inordinate amount of time into it, because you can't just recruit a kid, right? I can't just recruit you. If I'm going to get you, I have to recruit you, your mom, dad, grandpa, whoever is in your life, your high school coach, your position coach. I have to recruit everyone in your world so that everyone around you thinks you should come play for me, right? So it's literally 24/7, and that's not an exaggeration. I remember I recruited Jalen Holmes, a great defensive end out of Virginia Beach that played at Ohio State. And I mean, he would text me at 11 o'clock, like, "Hey coach, you got a minute?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm just recruiting him. He's a junior in high school, right? He would call me and talk about something that happened at school, life, football, whatever. We talk for an hour and a half at 11 p.m. Meanwhile, I got to be back at work at 5:30. And I'm like, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I was genuine with it. Like I didn't approach it from like a salesman angle where I'm trying to sell kids. So I loved it. Like Jalen and I still talk because we built such a relationship in recruiting, and that's rare. And I think that's why I had some success at it. Now, the biggest recruit I ever lost, or the most gut-wrenching one, and it wasn't the biggest recruit I ever lost, but because of the meaning behind it, it was a kid named James Quick. He was the #1 receiver in the country out of Louisville, Kentucky. And I recruited him. I mean, we got there in 2012, couldn't really get Stephon Diggs or some of the big names, because we had got hired like, a month before signing day. We got in on Stephon Diggs, but he ended up going to Maryland. We couldn't flip it at the end. So that 2013 class was the first class that I had a full year to recruit. And I sunk my teeth into the number one receiver in the country. And he committed. He committed in December, right before he went to the Army All-American game. He was coming. I got it done. And he was a freak show. And then something happened at that Army All-American game where it was really between us and Louisville. Dad went to Louisville, huge Louisville fans. Charlie Strong was at Louisville. And it was, but I beat Louisville, like the hometown, like the odds-on favorite to get this kid. We stole him from him. Right. And then Louisville went out against an overrated Florida team in a bowl game and beat the brakes off of them. And the minute they did, his dad flipped on me, got the kid to flip the kid. And it was the day before the Army game where he was going to announce he was a Buckeye. And so all of a sudden that next morning, I'm like talking to the family, and I'm not getting anything back. And I'm like, oh shit, something happened overnight. Like this is going to go bad. And sure enough, he picked Louisville at the Army game. And it was just gut wrenching because I needed that kid. I needed that. And the best part is he needed us. He didn't need to go to Louisville, stay at home. He needed to come to Ohio State and get developed. And he didn't pan out at Louisville. His dad and I have talked several times after the fact. And he's like, damn, we screwed that up. Like we really made the wrong decision. And I'm like, yeah, I know.
I know you did. Yeah.
They were running the ball with Lamar Jackson every play. He wasn't getting the ball.
Yeah, it was before Lamar, but yeah, it's same difference.
Oh, yeah.
Might have been Teddy Bridgewater back then, honestly.
It was probably Teddy. I was probably off on that a little
for
bit.
at least a year, I would think. I think Teddy got drafted in 2014, I think, but
yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah.
So there was, I don't know if there was someone in between Teddy and Lamar, I think, but either way, the kid didn't really see the field, and mostly not because of talent, not because of the offense, not because of Louisville, but it's hard sometimes for a kid to stay home and be a big time recruit like that and then pan out, because there's no like, all right, I'm at Ohio State, I'm grinding, I'm doing this. It's like if shit gets uncomfortable, you can just go home, go hang out with your high school friends. Like you can just escape that development process, and some kids just can't do it. There's not a lot of kids that are Columbus City kids that have made it at Ohio State. It's hard to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like that. It's like that proverbial chip on the shoulder. You would say is like not as big overall. Like if you're at home and all that, it's not going to potentially grow and all if you're away from another school. I think that's what you're kind of getting at. But yeah,
and it's just you don't ever fully commit because you still have your support system and your safety net right there. I mean, we had a kid that lives in the same suburb that I live in. He came to Ohio State and he ended up playing, but initially he struggled because when shit got hard, he would leave and I'd see him at the country club I belong to. And I'm like, what are you doing here? And he'd be like, oh, I just wanted to come back and, stay at my house. And it's like, bro, go back to campus. Like, go commit to being a college athlete.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Like it's a big time thing going to Ohio State. Like you are becoming a man basically, because it's not going to be, it's going to be a lot different than high school. And there's people have to realize that it's not going to be easy. Like you don't just get on the field. You have to work. Like you see all these 5-star freshmen coming into Ohio State. Not a single one of them right now are like projected in the top, maybe even two first or second string depth chart right now. Other than maybe like a CJ Hicks or somebody like that.
And only because the linebacker room's so bad.
Exactly. They can't read their blocks. They can't react to the ball. Like we saw it last year. It was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So to follow up on the recruiting thing, I'll try to give an insight to everybody at home. I know your recruiting director, when you guys are first identifying talent, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody is making, their name for themselves, the 5-star kids, their names. But when you guys are trying to figure out which kids you're going to target, talk about, Pantoni, does he bring in a list of guys just into the coaches and you guys go out and say, we're going to go watch film on this guy and attack him hard? How does it work? How are you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. So Ohio State's obviously a different level than even other Division I's. I mean, I coached at Marshall and Temple, and right. Although the recruiting staff was great at both of those places, you're kind of on your own. One, you're recruiting a different kid than you are at Ohio State. So it's a little more difficult. You can find diamonds in the rough. I mean, I actually, my proudest recruiting accomplishments were some of the kids I had at Marshall and Temple, like Robbie Anderson, who's still playing in the NFL, was a kid that I found and recruited at Temple. Yep. Because it's harder there. You got to try to find an NFL football player that's under the radar. That's tough because there's a lot of people looking for him. But at Ohio State, it's totally different. I mean, you have
Right.
Mark Pantoni, who's the best in the country at what he does. I mean, he has a staff of people that have gone through and evaluated every kid. I mean, they'll give you cut-ups. Like when you watch highlight tapes, like if you go watch Brandon Innis's highlight tape on YouTube or Huddle, that's not what Ohio State coaches watch. They don't watch that highlight tape. That recruiting staff has put together a coach's tape, which is basically like, here's all his highlights and lowlights. It's basically any play that college coach would want to see on that player, good and bad, right? So you're always going to get an initial list, but at the end of the day, they're recruiting guys. They don't know what they're talking about for the most part, right? Mark does a great job, but he doesn't know as well as Brian Hartline on what receivers are in what order, right? Now he has a valid opinion and he's excellent at it, but you guys might butt heads. But they give you that initial list for you to start evaluating and start hammering through, and then you end up going out and finding your own kids too. Like I'll go to St. Louis and find Cameron Brown, and it's like he's on nobody's list. Right. And I'm like, I'm just telling you, I watch this kid work out. He's an Ohio State level player. I think he's a corner, but he could play receiver. And so you find those kids when you go on the road, and it's fluid. It's always changing. You know, guys move up, guys move down, guys get added to the list. Kids play great the first half of the year, and all of a sudden they jump. You know, it's always fluid.
Right. It's just crazy. I just feel like it'd be so hard to identify this talent out of thousands and thousands, even millions of high school players. Like the Cam Brown situation, like you said, he was a wide receiver, right? Recruit out of high school. And and obviously he's worked out as a corner. He's played meaningful minutes the past 3 years. And then this year he's probably going to be I mean, him and Denzel Burr are both going to easily be the starting corners, but I think Cameron Brown's one of the most underrated players on the team.
Oh, I think he has a chance to be a first rounder.
I agree. I've always thought that. When he came back, Matt down there was super excited about it on Twitter. You got into some argument.
Man. Just a dog. Yeah, I love him.
All you had to watch is the Michigan game. Yep. There was one kid that was
in that huddle going right at him. Yeah, 100%. He wasn't taking no shit from him. I mean,
no, I'm talking. He battled. He was in the line. The whole offensive line's face.
Offensive line going at him, man. I mean,
I don't care how big you are.
70 pounds, just going at him. Yeah, I mean, shit. It's awesome.
And actually, that's surprising to me because he's he's developed that. That's credit to Mickey Marotti and him. But coming out of high school, boy, he was the quietest, nicest kid alive.
Wouldn't have done that his freshman year, that's for sure.
No.
But like that was the Joe Moore winning offensive line, but he's not scared at all of those boys. He came ready to play. He was one of the few defensive players that game that was actually in the game, playing like an Ohio State player should in the game, because the front seven was just non-existent that game.
Yeah, it was just a bad deal.
Yeah, it was. I was there, freezing, 20 degrees, snowing, wanted to die, wanted to leave, especially when they were killing us at the end. I left like when they got that final sack. I was out, and then just getting tormented. I hated it, but it made me even more ready for this next game coming up because I'm going to be ready to celebrate.
And if you take your Buckeye fanhood glasses off, it was what needed to happen.
It was.
Right? Because they had a senior laden team. Ohio State was young. Ohio State was kind of a front running team, and it hasn't been a competitive rivalry in I don't know how long. They need, like, the rivalry in college football needed that to happen to just re-energize that rivalry and everything about it.
100%. Yeah.
I agree.
So to go ahead and transition on to the next question, two-part question again. I want to know your favorite player you ever coached, meaning, work ethic, this, that, just best guy to be around. And then the second part, who's the best player you ever coached? Most talented, most athletic, went on to the NFL, did this, that, or the other. So it's, you would think the question goes together, but it doesn't really. It's kind of a two-part deal.
No, yeah, it doesn't. So my favorite player I coached, that's tough, man. I've had a lot of them. It's probably Paris Campbell, to be honest with you.
Okay.
And it's tough to not mention Terry McLaurin and Michael Thomas also, and Johnny Dixon. I mean, Johnny Dixon, I started recruiting him when he was 15. So I don't know. That's like saying which kid is your favorite. It's like I don't know.
I know. It's a hard question, but like it's just because we always hear about how unselfish Terry McLaurin and Evan Spencer were, just being dudes, and just things like that. So like,
here's the thing. Michael Thomas took everything I was trying for 2 years to institute in my room: culture, work ethic, all of that, and he took it, embraced it. It blossomed because of him, and then he took it to levels that I didn't even see. And so it's hard for it not to be him. But at the same time, a guy like Paris Campbell, every single day was amazing to coach that kid. Like every day, even when he was a freshman and was awful, he wasn't any good. He could just run kind of. He was a running back that was trying to become a receiver. It still was fun because he had a smile on his face, hardest worker I've ever met. And Terry McLaurin they were two peas in a pod. They both needed a ton of development. They both showed up every day, bright-eyed, ready to go. I mean, and just grinded for 5 years. So it's hard to pick any, but it's all part of the journey.
Mm-hmm. And now
okay. And the second part of the question was what?
The best player.
The best player I've ever seen play football, any position, anywhere, is Percy Harvin.
I knew
Not
it.
even close.
I wanted to ask. Yes. I knew it. 100%. I knew it. I knew you were a big Percy Harvin.
That's all you need to know about Percy Harvin. Pete Carroll had him at Seattle. He called Urban Meyer because Percy was a head case. I mean, he was nuts and not nuts. That's not fair. He had a bunch of mental stuff going on. He was bipolar, maybe would snap on people. Like he would beat the shit out of people. I mean, he fought Golden Tate, I think before the Super Bowl or before the NFC Championship game.
Both those guys had a good game too.
Yeah. So Pete Carroll called Urban, was like, "Hey, I just need your advice. Like you managed this kid for 3 years. I'm trying to figure out how to do it." And this is a guy that coached Reggie Bush, recruited and coached Reggie Bush. He told Urban, he said, I got to figure out how to manage this because I'm pretty sure this is the best football player that ever buckled a helmet ever in any era.
Wow.
And he was, man, that kid was so good.
Really?
He was just dynamic, like kind of like a Curtis Samuel, but better type of.
And you can't even evaluate his numbers because of how he was when you play. Shit, he didn't even go to the South Carolina game one year because he had a headache and didn't want to go. But if the lights were bright and you're playing Oklahoma in the national championship game, the Super Bowl, no chance. That kid he's gonna have a career day. Monster.
Oh man, yeah. I remember he returned that kick for a touchdown against the Broncos, and I mean, obviously that game was way out of reach to begin with, but that was just the icing on the cake. I knew that put a big smile on your face, though.
Oh, just you want those kids to succeed, and he did to an extent. I mean, he had a shorter career than he should have, but he had those flashes, and you know what? He's doing well, so that's all that matters. And he got to live his dream.
Still played in the NFL, still made good money, stuff like that.
Well, I don't know everything about you three, but I don't think any of us four ever got to step on the field in an NFL game. So I'm just saying.
I did.
He made it.
Unfortunately, I didn't make it that far.
Hey. Yeah, I quit that. I quit that in high school. I'll tell you that. I'm a basketball player. That's
Hooper.
Oh yeah, Hooper. Them grass drills, man. It's something else. But that's something else. But yeah.
I have a backup question that kind of goes off of that involving Paris Campbell. I know you didn't end up coaching Jameson Williams, but who do you think is faster, Paris Campbell or Jameson Williams?
That's a good question.
I don't know. Paris is one of the fastest kids I've ever seen. And Jameson, I think Jameson probably has there's a number of ways to answer this. And so I'll give you a coach's answer, right? There's straight line track speed. Paris, I think, has JMO in that. But when you talk, and then there's open field ball in your hand speed. And I think Paris still has Jameson in that. But then there's route speed. Right.
Yeah.
And ball skills tie into route speed because you have to be able to explode through a catch and hit top speed and stay at top speed through a catch. And that's where Jameson is different. He runs a slant and his separation out of that slant is insane. When he catches the football, there's no slowing down. No. So that's such a political answer. I'd say both are faster than the other, but it's just different situations. I think if you lined them up on a track, it's going to be a dogfight, but I think Paris edges Jameson out. But at the same time, when I recruited Jameson, I went to a track meet in St. Louis, a regional track meet, and he won 6 events. I've never even heard of a kid attempting 6 events. He's there. Just you're talking about 2 freaks in nature.
Yeah. I just thought like those had to be maybe the 2 fastest guys that you ever coached / recruited. So I just had to see like what you thought, and that makes a lot. I never really thought of it that way. Like Jameson does run his routes faster than Paris Campbell. Like Paris Campbell, like you give him that jet sweep like he had against Michigan 2018 down the sideline, nobody's catching him.
Listen, here's the thing. Paris Campbell, he's a wide receiver and he became a really good one. but that kid is a running back at heart. Like
100%.
played running back in high school his whole life. So when you just hand him the ball and he runs a sweep or whatever, it is like, I mean, you can see the ground smoking after he runs just because it's all natural ability. Now, when it comes to receiver play, he's not as polished as Jameson was. And it's, doesn't make him less of a player. He actually became a phenomenal route runner, and his ball skills went from about a 5 to about an 8.5. So he improved a lot of things, but Jameson was just more natural at the position.
Right. I agree. I feel like Jameson's more of like could be a wide receiver one, like wide out. Like he can play wide and not have to like Paris. You can put him anywhere. He's a gadget player. He can be whatever you want him to be. Mm-hmm. Like you said, like he's a running back at heart. He seems like a strong kid. He runs through tackles.
Oh, he's strong as shit.
Yeah. I kind of noticed that he like isn't afraid to take hits where Jameson.
I'm saying he runs like a back. Like you're not going to arm tackle Paris, and that's uncommon for receivers.
Exactly.
It's like he's Debo Samuel-ish is what he reminds me of Debo Samuel a lot.
Right. I agree. I just think he's a lot different than Jameson. And that was the answer. Like that makes a lot of sense. Like I never thought of it that way. Like explosion out of routes, but that makes so much more sense now. Like why doesn't Paris Campbell get as open as Jameson Williams on these plays? But he's just a different player.
Yeah. Different skill set. That's all.
Right.
For sure. I hope stuff will, eventually work out with Paris Campbell and all that stuff. I know he had some injuries when he was with the Colts and everything, but, new season and everything's that Matt Ryan is his quarterback. We'll see what happens with that. I do want to ask before I go over to this next question I've been waiting to ask. So obviously you got Michael Thomas and Terry McLaurin. When those two guys are healthy, where would you rank them in the NFL of receivers?
Michael Thomas had the best 3-year run.
He did.
Of any receiver. I mean, better than any receiver that ever played the game. So to not put him in the top 5, a fully healthy Michael Thomas, I mean, I can see the argument that he doesn't have Drew Brees anymore, but he was dominant. I mean, he was, and then he had injury issues for a year and a half. And it's, I don't know why that people immediately think that means a kid can't play. If he's 100% healthy, he's 100% a top 10, top 5 receiver in the NFL. And I think Terry is a top 10 receiver in the NFL too. He might be lower part of the top 10, but Terry has done well in an awful organization with no quarterback. Yeah. You just imagine him with a quarterback that could throw.
It'd be insane.
So I think they're both top 10 receivers in the NFL. And I don't know how you debate that really.
Yeah, I can see. I agree with the Michael Thomas thing though. I mean, talking about that 3-year run and everything. I mean, he led the league in catches, set the all-time record for catches. I think Cooper Kupp might have broke that. I'm not entirely sure on that, but Michael Thomas did have that very dominant run, especially from 2017 through 2019. Terry McLaurin, he walks up to the game and he's asking who's his quarterback going to be this week. I mean, how are you going to function that way?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like Heineke or what was, I don't even know the guy's name. Heineke.
Taylor Heineke.
Taylor Heineke. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's had Taylor Heineke. Might have had Josh Johnson one week. Now he's got
Alex Smith.
Wentz, Alex Smith for a bit.
Yeah, he's had them all.
Yeah, he's had every single quarterback you could think of.
He had Dwayne.
Yeah, he had Dwayne. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. But yeah, but still, God rest his soul. But I mean, he's had everybody though, but the fact that he's still producing those numbers and everything is beyond astonishing. But I do want to say this. I want to get in this next question about quarterbacks. So I'm a big Bengals fan. Joe Burrow. All right. Athens, Ohio, came to Ohio State from 2015 through 2017. I've heard the stories and stuff about how he was in college, throws like a girl, this, that, whatever. What was he like before the blow up, and what has made him so successful now?
I mean, I don't know what rating you have on your podcast, but he has huge energy. That's a politically correct way to say it. He has that swagger. He has that mojo. He has that like chip on his shoulder, pissed off to prove to you that he is going to take your soul from you. Like that's just what he has. He has the it factor that Michael Jordan had. And I honestly am sitting here saying that's not overstating it. I know Jordan was like the greatest competitor that ever lived. Joe Burrow is that. And that's why he is where he is. That's why he's playing how he's playing. That's why the Bengals were in the Super Bowl. Yep. Because, and we saw it, he just wasn't quite there yet. And Dwayne Haskins was slightly ahead of him.
Yeah.
Right. And so he had to make a business decision. Do I want to sit behind Dwayne or do I want to go take a starting job? And so he went to LSU, got a starting job. And that first year at LSU, he was a good quarterback. He wasn't anything special, but that 2019 season, good Lord. I mean, we haven't seen a quarterback play like that ever.
No,
It was incredible.
Not even close.
They opened up that offense though. You talk about, I don't know who their offensive coordinator was in 2018. I think he had like 18 touchdowns to 5 picks that year. But when Joe Brady came in from the Saints and they just went 5 wide and everything, they were just spreading the field out. He was just throwing all over the place. Obviously, his cast was amazing. One of those guys, Jamar Chase. That's another story for another time. But do you have any stories of Joe Burrow, like anything like that hasn't really been told at Ohio State? Anything that you could think of?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, he we did mat drills in the winter when you do all kinds of like combative drills, like tire pulls, one-on-one, you versus whoever else. And he was always a monster in them. I mean, that's why you knew he had the it factor. Like they'd put Joe Burrow against a starting linebacker and he would take the tire from him. Like he had that competitive edge. And there was one time he did a tire, you get on, those big tires, one guy on each side, they blow the whistle and you got to pull the tire and get it away from the other guy. And so he did it, and I can't remember the linebacker. It was, I don't know, one of our better linebackers. And they're battling, and he kind of lost his footing, and the linebackers pulled him all the way across the mat. And any other kid was done. It was over. Like, you just let go, like, I lost. And he didn't let go. He gets back up, and he starts pulling him all the way back to his side of the mat. And you're looking like, this kid won't quit. Like, he's not going to give in. And he just had that. It was like this small town kid. His dad was a college football coach, wasn't highly recruited, got an Ohio State offer, was kind of a reach. And he had this chip on his shoulder. Like, he was pissed off to prove to people that he belonged. Right. And now he's pissed off for greatness, and he's just not going to stop till he gets there.
I'll tell you that I'm gonna wear my Joe fucking Burrow shirt so more proudly. Right? Just but yeah, just good stuff to hear about him and all. Where would you rank him in the quarterbacks? I know it's kind of early, played a year and a half, had this ridiculous season and all, but where would you like rank him as of right now going into 2022?
I mean, it's tough to rank anyone behind Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. I mean, granted, I mean, there's a number of ways to approach this conversation. I've had this conversation several times. If you're talking about who do I want to be my quarterback right now, Joe Burrow. No one else in the league, number one by far, because I want to be good in 5 years too, and 7 years, right? Mm-hmm. So like Tom Brady would be great, but what has he got? I mean, shit, he just retired and magically came back. Like,
he's knows what he's got, really.
Yeah,
I mean, he could just keep going.
Yeah, Fox is calling his name too. So I mean,
eventually, 5 years ago, he just keeps winning, man. It's crazy.
There's no doubt. But for the long haul, I want Joe Burrow. But I mean, I think if you talk about this season, where's he at? He's definitely top 5. I could concede to you Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, I think, are 1 and 2 or 1A, 1B. And then I could buy Matt Stafford. I'm not on Patrick Mahomes' hype train. Never really have been. He was doing stuff and getting away with stuff that was absurd and we've never seen before. And that time was going to run out on that. And now he lost Tyreek Hill. I don't think Mecole Hardman is even on close to the level of Tyreek Hill. So I think Joe Burrow's a solid 4 at worst.
Okay.
Yeah. I love that. I love it, especially I see a lot of these people like saying that Justin Herbert is clearly better because look at the stats. Well, the stats are one
traits. I didn't mean to cut you off, but traits. Oh, that drives me crazy. People on TikTok and all.
One of them went to the Super Bowl. The other one hasn't made the playoffs. Like, what? I don't care about the traits because they both have good cores around them. Joe Burrow has been better than Justin Herbert, in my opinion.
There's no analytic or no film that you could study that says otherwise.
I agree. Yeah, 100%. Like, I'm not even like a Bengals fan. I'm a Steelers fan. And I'm saying this. So like, but I'm a Buckeye fan, and so I like Joe Burrow, but still.
Yeah. Just and one more thing before I pass off to Brady. So we talk about the it factor, and it's really hard to explain what that it factor is if you break it down. Does Zach Smith have the grasp of what the it factor is if you could like break it down a little bit? It is a tough thing to break down sometimes, but you just know when it's there.
It's literally just, it's kind of twofold. I look at it 2 ways, and this is the it factor. One is you have this burning desire deep in your soul to become great. right? That's the first thing. You have to really want to, and I'm not talking about you say like, I want to be great and you work hard every now and then. I'm talking about when you look in the mirror, your habits, the things you do every day, they align with the pursuit to greatness. That's the first thing, right? You have to genuinely have to honestly want to be great and act that. Your habits have to match that. And the second thing has to be when the lights turn on, when the moment is big, when the fire is hot, you have to raise your level of play and everyone around you. You have to, like, you literally are dying to be in those moments. Like Joe Burrow wants it to be fourth and goal in the Super Bowl with 3 seconds left. Like he wants that play every day. Like if you ask him like, hey, here's a scenario, 4th and goal from the 9, 1 second left, down by 5, you have the ball. You want to, he'd be like, can I do that every play? I want to do that every play. Like he wants the biggest stage, the brightest lights, all of that, because you're starving for it. And so those are the two things that I look for, right? Is that burning desire to be great, and then just seeking those moments, right? And the big stages and the pressure and thriving.
Right. And I remember Mike Weber tweeted out like he's Tom Brady and nobody even knows it back in like 2017 about Joe Burrow. And
that's crazy. Isn't that crazy, dude? I mean, seriously, he's literally Tom Brady, just a little bit more talented. That's really what I would compare him to. A little bit more athletic. You know what I'm saying? Can move more. Yeah. Probably has a little bit better arm.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just like he's got the Tom Brady, Michael Jordan deal, man. He's just a winner. He's just a winner. That's the best way I can describe him.
I know the kid. I know him really well. And what you worry about with someone like that is the distractions, right? All the like, chicks and the limelight and the money, and the kid is so far from all that. I mean, don't get me wrong, he probably pulls all kinds of chicks, but he has his priorities in line, right? They are where they need to be, and that is not going to change because of his character, like who he is deep down in his soul.
I definitely agree with that for sure.
100%. But I guess we'll go ahead and move on to the next question. Really nice talking about Joe Burrow, though.
It was.
He's an interesting topic for sure. But I'm going to go ahead and ask why, because obviously this was probably not your decision whatsoever, but why do you think the offense didn't shift from JT when they had the chance in 2017 when he got injured against Michigan, heading into the Big Ten championship week? You got Dwayne, Joe, you can start either of them. But they started JT again, and they won by like 3, and the offense didn't look that good. Why do you think?
Because Urban Meyer cannot make that decision. He didn't have the balls to make a decision like Nick Saban made in the national championship game with your Heisman, trophy got Jalen Hurts as your quarterback. Nick Saban benched him at halftime of the national championship game and brought Tua Tagovailoa in and won the national championship because of it. They would have lost if Jalen Hurts played. Urban never had the balls to make that decision because anyone with a brain, every coach on staff knew that if Dwayne Haskins was the quarterback in that Big Ten championship game, we had a better chance of winning big and making the playoffs. Everyone knew that.
Yep.
But Urban couldn't do it because JT was so phenomenal as a leader, as talking about it factor, all of that. JT had it, and he was the captain. And Urban couldn't make the calculated decision to put Dwayne in because that's what the team needed. The betterment of the team needed Dwayne Haskins at quarterback.
And then there he could just tell JT, we think you're kind of banged up, like maybe you should sit this one out type of thing. Or
but you couldn't do that because there's too much transparency with trainers. I mean, JT literally slept over at one of our assistant trainers' houses. I mean, he was there for the entire week getting treatments in the middle of the nights. Like that kid was everything you want in a quarterback and a football player. I mean, he literally was like, no, I'm playing. This is a championship game. I'm playing. Mm-hmm. And he lived in a trainer's house for the entire week and made sure his knee was right.
Oh my God. So
he had meniscus surgery and played 7 days later. That's absurd.
That's insane. Part of me just hoped that that surgery would last a little. No offense to JT. I want his knee healed and all, but I was so excited to see Dwayne in that big moment after he led us to victory against Michigan. And I mean, JT was okay that game, but as soon as he threw that deep touchdown to Terry McLaurin, threw a pick 6 very next drive. I believe.
And the deep touchdown to Terry McLaurin was a trick play, or it was a scheme play, and Terry McLaurin didn't have anyone within 30 yards of him.
No,
Yeah.
and
Like,
I
I could have thrown that touchdown. I'm not even that great of a thrower, but I could have.
right. And me and Matt were actually sitting in that end zone that Terry ran into, pretty hyped with some drunk Wisconsin fans.
Funny thing was, I was in the other end zone for that, so we were all at that game. We didn't even freaking.
We were all at that game. Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, was there a conversation with you, Ryan, and the coaching staff and Urban about replacing JT during the season
No.
at all?
No.
Just in general, did you guys ever bring? You said everybody like knew it. You know, like okay, obviously Dwayne's better than him, but was it ever brought to Urban's attention, or just you know what I mean? You guys, so you just didn't even try it. Didn't even try to have a
There's no
conversation.
point. Urban's coached football for 30 years. He sees it. Like, what do I need? I'm 20 years younger than Urban. What do I need to walk in his office and be like, hey, coach, I think Dwayne's better than JT? He'd look at me like, what? Shut the fuck up. Like,
Right.
Because it's a bigger picture than that, right? You're going to bench your silver football winning, like Big Ten player of the year, like captain, 3-time captain, everything. You're going to bench him for a young kid. And Dwayne, you know, as talented and as good as he wasn't that general leader. Like, he wasn't that guy that just like took control. He was kind of just, he just did his job. And so it would have been a tough thing to do. And
Right, 100%.
Urban Meyer knew as well as anyone if that change should have been made. He knew it.
Right. Yeah. And the next year, I remember like thinking, if we're going to still run that, I didn't know about Dwayne's running ability at that point, because the only time I saw him run was against Michigan. He almost scored in 2017.
Bro,
so I'm like,
Dwayne cannot run or couldn't run.
No, he couldn't run. But I did love first play against Michigan in 2018, taking that first down carry, though. That was hype. That was hype.
Yeah,
that's what made me – I knew we were going to win at that point. Like, this Michigan mighty defense can't stop Dwayne Haskins running the ball. And then Chris Olave just takes in 20 touchdowns, and they can't run with us.
Yep.
That's what it was.
Not at all. I will ask this, though, okay? So we're going to take it back many years. 2008. We brought up Percy Harvin. 2008 Florida Gators. You were part of 2 national championship teams, I believe, right? 2006, 2008.
In 2014, yeah.
In 2014, yeah. I'm talking about the Florida team. So 2006 beat Ohio State.
Yep.
You know, so you got the best of both right there. But 2008, that team had so many personalities on one team. What could you make out of that? Some players on that team. Just what was your thoughts as a young guy in 2008 with a ton of conflicting personalities, or not conflicting because they came together and won the national championship? Just give me the thoughts on 2008.
Yeah, I mean, it got pretty conflicting in 2009, but just unbelievable players. One of the most talented teams. It might have been the most talented team I've ever been a part of. That or the 2014-15 Ohio State team. But just massive personalities. I mean, just and some different kids. I mean, the culture and quality of kid was a little different at Florida. You had some wild kids. I mean, just like I don't even know how to explain it. They just were. It was nuts. I mean, it was some of the best players in the country, one of those talented teams maybe to ever suit up. And they had some personalities to match. I mean, the Pouncey twins, we could go down the roster. Tim Tebow, Brandon Spikes, Aaron Hernandez, Percy Harvin. I mean, just some of Joe Hayden, just ridiculous football players.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That might have been. Do you think that was your most talented team you coached, or was like a team like Ohio State 2015? Which one would you put ahead of the other one? 2015 Ohio State or 2008 Florida?
So 2008 only because I think there's a lot of similarities as far when it comes to talent level. But Tim Tebow is one of the best college quarterbacks to ever play the game, and I know he wasn't an NFL quarterback, but you can talk about the rosters all you want. That kid was dominant, running the football, play action, everything. And not to knock JT or Cardale or any of them, but I mean, I don't think anyone is out there arguing who had a better college career, Tim Tebow or JT Barrett. No one is, right? No. So it comes down to quarterbacks. And I think defenses are similar. I mean, the corners, Janoris Jenkins, first-round draft pick. Joe Hayden, first-round draft pick. The corners we had at Ohio State, all of them went first round. So it's very similar defense at every level. But I think the 2008 team was just a little better.
Okay. Yeah, I'd probably agree based off what Tim Tebow kind of pushed that team over the edge, I feel like.
He did.
He's just
because it's one thing to have to stop, Michael Thomas, Zeke Elliott, and Jalen Marshall. It's another thing when you have to stop all those guys and the quarterback is as dynamic a runner as Ezekiel Elliott, right? Like you got two of them.
Right. That's when you imagine Braxton Miller being back there with
without a doubt. That's a whole nother conversation. But like Tebow was literally like if Ezekiel Elliott could throw the ball. That's what he was like.
It's insane.
Nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So moving on to the next question. You worked under Ryan, I think for one day, right, as the offense coordinator, or 1 year, I'm sorry, as the offense coordinator. Longer today. So talk about how it is to work under him. What are his strengths as an offense coordinator? How elite is he? Because we see it all the time. I mean, he's putting together some of the best offenses there are. So talk about that.
He's the best I've ever been around, and the first time I worked for Ryan was 2005 in Florida. He was the GA and I was his assistant. So I've known him for whatever that is, 17 years now. He's honestly the best I've ever been around when it comes to, and he wasn't at Florida, obviously he was a GA, but you could tell he was really good, but his journey and all the stuff he studied, the work he's put in. I mean, he's brilliant. He's really brilliant. And some guys are brilliant. They're scheme guys. They're gurus. They're really smart. And they can't really connect with players. Ryan is unique. He's almost a unicorn where he is so smart when it comes to football, when it comes to scheme, when it comes to teaching. But at the same time, he can go recruit a young kid, right? Like a receiver from South Florida. He can connect with that kid. And that's not that common. Most coordinators aren't good at that, right? Guys like Ryan, guys that are really, really smart. So it was awesome to work for him. I learned a ton from him. Him and I really worked well together. It was great. Very, very different from working with Tom Herman, who also was really good, but very different. And then very different from Ed Warner and Tim Beck, who were.
We've heard all about that. Yeah. So next part of this, I'm not exactly sure if you have any desire to get back into coaching again, but if you do, who is a head coach in the college game that you maybe from afar always thought I could see myself working under him really well? I would love to coach with that guy. Just any coach.
So the two right now, obviously I would love to work for Ryan. I mean, first of all, I don't want to coach again, ever again. We talk about it on the front end. I just enjoy my kids too much and I want to be involved in their stuff. So I don't really have any desire, but if I did, I obviously would love to work for Ryan. Ryan's a good friend of mine. I enjoyed working for him as a coordinator. He'd be great to work for as a head coach. That would be awesome. But if we're talking people I don't know as well, I mean, I wish I would have taken the job in 2017 when I got offered a job from Nick Saban, just to see like what makes him so good and to evaluate, because no one's ever worked for Nick Saban and Urban Meyer. I would love to evaluate like the differences. Like why is Nick had this success and Urban's had similar success, but not as dynastic, right? Not as didn't build a dynasty like Saban did. Yeah. But if it's not Nick Saban or Ryan, it would be Steve Sarkisian. I think he's. You look at his resume and what he's done. He's the best quarterback coach in the history of college football. I mean, you could sell me on David Cutcliffe, but Steve Sarkisian is ridiculous. The quarterbacks he's coached, the guys at USC, the guys at Washington, the guys at Bama, like his resume is second to none ever. So I would love to work with him and learn how he teaches quarterbacks, how he coaches quarterbacks. I'm fascinated by experts, right? That's why I'm obsessed with Larry Johnson and how he does things. Like experts fascinate me, and Steve Sarkisian is an expert when it comes to quarterback play, and I would love to see it in person.
Yeah, right. And that speaks to why a guy like Arch Manning, a guy like Quinn Ewers would want to go to Texas. They've seen this. Mac Jones. Mac Jones was probably not that great of a quarterback when he arrived at Alabama, if I had to guess, even though we didn't see him much. Then you come out to 2020, he had the best season in the nation of any quarterback. And so, he's a great quarterbacks coach. And it's nice to see him have another try as a head coach too at Texas. I think he'll do better than Tom Herman, or else and obviously if he doesn't, he's gone. But
yeah, he definitely will. He already is.
Yeah. No, oh yeah, with the recruits he's getting and the level of the transfers, even like the kid from Bama transferred in, and They almost got Jordan Addison if USC didn't pay him like probably $5 more than Texas would have. Both of them would have probably.
Jordan Addison's average though, so
yeah, he's overrated. He's not even close to any of the Ohio State wide receivers last year. Let's just get that straight.
No,
I'm sure you. I know you agree with that.
Yeah, he's probably. I mean, he was probably a top 10 receiver in the country, but he wasn't the best. That's just a joke.
No. Yeah, he wasn't like he was not on the level of any of those first round receivers you saw picked, or especially like Jameson Williams, Jackson Smith and Jibba, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. It just wasn't a contest.
No, it wasn't.
For sure.
But the last another question. This is kind of like a broad question, I guess, but what are 3 things you're looking forward to seeing this season in college football? It could be teams you're looking forward to watch, players, or just storylines in general.
Well, I'm big on just how the national landscape unfolds. That's what I really focus on. I don't really care about Ohio State if they're a 3-loss team, which they're not going to be. But if they're a 3-loss team, I'll watch them because I know some of the players and I have friends that coach there. But I just love the quest for the national championship. So that's what I focus all my time and energy on. And so some of the storylines coming into the year are just exciting, right? One is this is clearly a 2-horse race right now, which that can
100%.
change.
100%.
But it's going to be fun to watch how those 2 teams grind it out, and how Alabama takes on Texas and Ohio State takes on Notre Dame. Like they're not playing UAB and Bowling Green early. They're playing some decent teams. And then to see the Ohio State Michigan rivalry game, the answer, right? How Ryan Day and the program responds to being called soft and all that other stuff, and losing for the first time in almost 10 years or over 10 years, really. 2011 was the last loss. So 10 years. I can't do math. Sorry. But so those are 2 big things. The other thing I'm excited to watch and it's going to be fun is Georgia. I want to watch Georgia because they brought back this quarterback that is above average at best, and all their receivers transferred out. They lost their whole generational defense, and for some reason people still think they're like the 3rd best team in the country. And I'm like, okay, I'm excited to watch that.
Yeah, I don't see them making the playoffs at all this year, especially with.
And there's so many other storylines, right? Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley at USC. Like, how's that going to be? There's interest in West Coast football right now, which there hasn't been since Pete Carroll left. Basically, that's going to be fun to watch. Brian Kelly and what I believe will be an epic disaster in the Bayou at LSU. I think that'll be fun to watch. Like, Sarkisian, can he bring Texas back? There's so many fun things and exciting things to look for this year. I think this is going to be one of the best years of college football in the past 5-10 years.
Yeah.
Who's your projected top 4? Who do you, if you're sitting here today, July 20th, who are the other 2 besides Ohio State and Alabama? Who do you see getting in?
So I actually like violently hate discussing it before training camp even starts, because I just think there's too much that goes into it.
Too much to go on, right?
I mean, because I've been a part of national championship teams. I've been a part of teams that fell a little short. And in July, I would have told you, being on the inside, in 2014, I would have said, no, we're not a national championship team.
Right,
once Bryson got hurt, no chance. Then you watch the development through training camp and you're like, wait a minute now, this team's pretty fucking good. Right? And so much happens in training camp. So off the cuff, I really think it's Alabama and Ohio State are cut above everyone else. I think there's going to be some unique stories. Like NC State, I think is going to be strong. Wake has a quarterback that I think is decent. The SEC East is going to be an interesting thing to watch, because I think Tennessee has a chance to be pretty good. So I don't know who the top 4 are, because everything else is projection. Like USC and Caleb Williams, it sounds cute. But Caleb Williams held the ball in the pocket longer than any other quarterback in college football last year, and USC's O-line stunk. So if that's still the case, I don't care how good he is, they're not going to make a playoff. Right? Texas, we have no idea what Quinn Ewers is going to be. Right. We know they have a great running back. So there's so many things to figure out. I think Alabama and Ohio State are 2 that if they're not in the playoff at the end of the year, something tragic happened. Yeah. And then outside of that, I think it's anybody's game.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. I agree. Especially, I like your Tennessee point there with Hendon Hooker. That gives them an advantage over Georgia in just that sense right there. Hendon Hooker, I'd much rather have him than Stetson Bennett at quarterback.
Oh,
So
for
I
sure. And then, but when it comes to roster, I mean, Georgia has the more talented roster.
much
So
more.
it'll be interesting to see what happens with Josh Heupel and what he does in the offseason and how he develops them in training camp.
Yeah, I agree because Georgia, I mean, they lost that defense, but then they add high-level recruits back at those positions. But will they develop to the point that those players did? We just don't know that yet. And so and who knows if a CJ Stroud or a Bryce Young gets injured before the season. That could be one of the things that changes the whole trajectory. I mean, I'd cry if CJ Stroud got hurt. I would.
I cry when my pro quarterback got hurt, but that's something else. But you saw it coming. Saw that coming.
I got one more question here to close the deal. So with Oregon, or I'm sorry, so USC, UCLA come to the Big Ten. What are you thinking out west-ish? Oregon, Stanford, Washington. Does Notre Dame finally swallow their pride and make a jump to the Big Ten? So how are you seeing it fall from the conference expansion for the rest of the country? How are you seeing that?
I think the biggest key is Notre Dame and the ACC right now. I mean, you can talk about Oregon and all those other schools. Those schools don't matter. I mean, they might find their way into one of these power conferences, but they don't control anything that has to do with the landscape of college football.
Right.
The ACC has the rights to Notre Dame as it stands, and Notre Dame is trying to put pressure on these TV, stations or whatever, these companies, to give them a massive deal to stay independent. And if not, they're throwing it out there that they can be bought. And the ACC is the one. If the ACC doesn't make a move, those schools in the ACC like Clemson, Florida State, Miami, they're going to be looking to make a move.
Mm-hmm.
But if they add Notre Dame, they can solidify themselves as a third conference. Right. So all eyes are on the ACC and Notre Dame right now. That's all that matters. And if Notre Dame gets an independent deal, the ACC is going to crumble. I don't think Notre Dame would join the Big Ten as it stands today, but if they did, the ACC crumbles. Right. If Notre Dame goes to the ACC, you've now solidified 3 conferences, and the other 2, I don't know what to tell them. I mean, they're going to have to try to find Oregon and Phil Knight. He'll buy his way into something. Washington has a good following. Yep. Stanford, I mean, they're going to probably the Big 12 and Pac-12 tried to create a merger, and then those talks failed. So It's a train wreck right now. But all eyes are on Notre Dame, and Notre Dame loves that. So they're not in any hurry. Their ego is the size of the globe.
Right.
They're loving the fact that they control the next move, and they're going to play that out as long as they can.
Right. Yeah. It's just with them adding, USC, a rival, Stanford, obviously a big Notre Dame, old rival, Michigan, just their historic rivals all come to the Big Ten. It just, I just, you know what I mean? It feels eventually, for me at least, like they're going to have to make that move. You know what I'm saying?
It's what should happen. It doesn't mean it's
what should happen, but eventually I think they're just going to get to a situation where they can't be independent anymore. You know what I mean? Like they've got to get – because the conferences could just say they're not going to let the people schedule them. Deal like that to where, we're not going to play you if you don't join this conference type deal. And they're not going to want to not play their rivals for the rest of their –
I wish it would happen, but the money's too big. And the perfect opportunity presented itself with COVID. Notre Dame was literally going to not be able to play football. Yeah. And the ACC threw them a lifeline. And it's the best thing the ACC's ever done because it's the only reason they're still in existence and have a fighting chance
100%, here.
So it was a great chess move, but at the same time, you get pissed. Like if the ACC would have just left them out there out at sea, they would have had to pick a conference and actually committed.
Yep. That would have been one of the toughest things for them to do right there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. But Brady, you got it. You want to ask?
I was just gonna say. Then they got to have a fun time in the playoff playing Bama and getting destroyed again. Since they got to enter the ACC that year, had to be a fun game for them.
And a little taste of karma right there. But as we wind down on the show, you got your Menace to Sports podcast. Kind of tell people that aren't really familiar. There should be a lot of people that are familiar with your show, though. Tell us how that kind of got started and all. Menace to Sports podcast.
Yeah, it was weird. So much transpired when I got fired, and I don't want to say I went into hiding. Like I did a couple interviews, and I mainly did interviews because I felt like people were lying, not even about me, but about stuff that went on and Urban's involvement, and it just pissed me off because there was blatant lying going on, and I didn't like it. So I all advice was to just stay quiet and weather the storm and come out the other end and all this other bullshit that PR people tell you. So I was quiet. I did those couple interviews, and then I just was like, I got to figure out my next move.
Right.
And I knew I wanted to do something with college football, right? Whether it was get back into coaching one day, or I just love the game too much.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what that was. And then after a while, one of my friends and both of my brothers floated out to me. They're like, you should start a podcast. And I'm like, yeah, I've been thinking about that. And then it became a way to, I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this. I don't care if people listen. I just want to do it to stay involved in football and keep talking, keep studying, keep learning, and just stay in the game a little bit. And so I played up the whole media narrative. That was the other thing I thought about, right? Like, all right, the media is painting this picture of you. Doesn't matter what it is. Whatever they're saying you are. How do I take that, make it really dramatic, and turn it in my favor? And so I did. I spent 5 months building up a podcast, claiming that it was going to be this outlandish, like tell all, I'm going to expose people, like this angry, unhinged guy, right?
Yep.
And then people tuned in, and I played into it. I was like, and I told a story that was completely made up, and people were like
that story.
freaking out about it. And then and my whole point of telling the story was like, listen to that. Right now, you believe that. You believe that's true. And that's because I said it, and that doesn't make it true. And so I really flipped the script, and I created what's been an awesome brand and something cool to figure out. Now, I intended to do it as a hobby, not a career, not like a company, but it took off so big that I was like, all right, I got to figure out what to do with this.
You're right. Exactly. And speaking of that story, that's the one about the president, right?
It is.
I remember that. that one got to me. I was burst. I don't think I've ever laughed as hard at a sports podcast as I did during that moment. Especially when you like pointed out the fact that everyone believed you. I believed it.
So what's funny, and I'm not going to say who it was, but one of my best friends, who's a big time college football coach, was the one that came up with that idea. Not the story, but we still. I talk to I have good friends that still coach. I talk to him every day after I got fired because he would always check on me, and because he knew I was going through some shit. Exactly. And he was like, and I was telling him about the podcast. He was like, what you should do. There was all these lies and all this stuff created in the media, and people believed it because it's what it said. He said, you should just tell a huge lie. Yeah. And then like 5 episodes later, tell them it wasn't true and make them realize that you made them believe that just because you said it. Right. And I was like, I don't know about 5 episodes, but I definitely, that's brilliant. Like that's absolutely how to start it. So it wasn't even my idea, and it was a brilliant idea.
Yeah, it was. I was like, when you told that story, I didn't know if you were just gunning for blood. Like you got to take out everybody, start taking out Urban, right. All these guys, all the bad things they've done. But then when you said it was a joke, I was like, well, that was perfect. I mean, truth too. Like everyone believes that stuff that any media outlet will say, even though half the time it's not true.
And here's been my point forever. Like I don't even defend my innocence at all. Like I don't even care anymore. But I mean, I can put all the points up and defend it all. But the reality is, like, if I say I didn't do those things, you still don't fucking know if I did or not. The reality is there's no way for anyone to know. So how are you going to judge me or anyone else based on what people say? It's just ridiculous.
It is. And I love on Twitter where people you'll be arguing with another fan base or something, and they'll just like say something that's just they have no idea about. They just heard about it on the news one day. And people expose themselves when they do that. It's like, wow, well, one, you really don't know what you're talking about. You didn't look into that at all. And two, you just want to talk shit, I guess. Yeah, you clearly got beat in the actual argument about, like, I don't know, let's say you said that CJ Stroud was better than Hendon Hooker. I don't know, like something random. And then they'll be like, well, you did this, you did that. It's like, well,
but it's not just fan bases. It's Desmond Howard.
Yeah.
I called Desmond Howard out for the classless shit he did at the Heisman. And immediately he's like, anger management, beating your wife. I'm like, oh, bro, you're so stereotypical. Yeah. Absolute jackass that doesn't know anything. Gotcha.
No, I hate Desmond Howard. He made a whole fool of himself during the Heisman ceremony too. I love CJ Stroud. He is. And then when you made that point about Carnell Tate, and then that whole Tennessee fan base right up in you, like, what?
It's like I said, the kid's a really good player. What are you bitching about?
I know. I mean, you didn't say, you just were telling the truth about what you saw on tape. Why would you come on the show and just say, oh yeah, he's great, he's going to be the best player in the nation, like he's the next Garrett Wilson? Like, he's not anything like Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave play style. He's different size, different. He's not as fast.
Yeah,
he could be great.
And the thing that I'm shocked people don't realize yet is I don't care. I don't care if the kid gets mad because I said he is not very polished. Like it doesn't.
Right.
I don't care. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Got to
And
keep
you
it
said
real.
nice things about Brandon Ennis, and then he even came at you like, and then you're like, well, you don't have as much top end speed as you think you do. And I just
And the best part is I know all of Brandon Ennis's high school coaches. It's like, stop it. I talk to your coaches, once a month.
right. Yeah.
Yep. Know something that you don't know and all that. But so you got some stuff. You have some stuff going on at Ohio State games this year and all that for your Menace stuff. So you guys are.
So we're working on it. We've had tailgates for the home games in the past, and we kind of not dropped the ball, but we came to a disagreement on the location because we blew it up. I mean, it took off. I mean, it was a parking garage that we made huge, and now the people that own it think it's like worth some crazy amount of money. It's like time out, like. Yeah, go back to being a parking garage. How about that? So that kind of fell through. So we're working on some stuff. Those events, man, they are a lot of work. And so I'm working on some stuff. I think we might have some stuff planned, but if not, we're actually in talks with maybe doing some remote location stuff at a Tennessee game, at a Texas game. So we'll see. But awesome. I'm hoping to have some really cool stuff going this fall outside of just the show.
That's awesome. Great stuff to hear.
Was Braxton Miller at those too? Like I remember you.
Yeah, so I did them for 2 years. Just my show did it, and then Braxton and I got in a conversation, and he wanted to be a part of it. So Braxton and I did them last year, the whole season, and they were epic. I mean, the big games were ridiculous. They were they're the best tailgate on campus by far.
Right.
That's awesome.
Like did you guys had one from the Michigan State game, I remember, and I'm guessing that one was good based off the amount of points. I'm sure there was a lot of crazies.
The Penn State tailgate, I mean, it'll go down in history. There's 400 people in a parking garage. It was absolutely insane. Halloween weekend, it was probably the craziest tailgate I've ever even seen.
Right.
That's awesome.
Have you been to an Ohio State game since you were fired, or have you haven't been to one? Okay, that's probably
Yeah.
I mean, like, it sounds more fun to be able to tailgate like that, anyways, than at the game. Even in some instances, like,
I like watching the games, but I like going to the games. Nothing. I mean, I get it. Like, people love it, but being on the sidelines for 15 years, it's like there's nothing really appealing about that.
Yeah, it probably is a different feel and stuff for me. Being on the sidelines and coming.
But you don't want to deal with it. Like, okay, someone take the pictures. Look at Zach Smith; he's in the stands. It's like, okay, no desire.
Like you're content with what you're at right now and all that stuff. In a way, for sure. But Zach, I appreciate you coming on the show tonight. Really appreciate you taking time out of the day. Matt, Brady, you guys got any more additional comments to end this thing?
Man, I appreciate Zach for coming on. It was great talking some football and learning some new things for sure.
Definitely.
For sure.
I mean, this is huge for us. I mean, not only are you a former football Ohio State coach, we don't get opportunities to do that, but we're trying to get this podcast up and running too. So having a guy that's successful in both fields, you know what I'm saying, coming on, I mean, that's a huge testament to who you are as a man, not just a football coach or a podcaster. So we really appreciate it. I mean, we're out here grinding on this, trying to get it going, and you take time out of your busy day to do that. That's awesome, man. So I appreciate it. Really do.
Right.
Absolutely, man. I enjoyed it. So keep grinding, fellas. If you need any help, let me know. I can give you some pointers. I got thrust into this world unintentionally, and I've learned a ton.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
We definitely appreciate it, man. We do, and we'll definitely be in contact with you as the future goes on. For that, folks, just tune into his podcast, Menace Sports Podcast. You guys go live Wednesday through Friday, or is it just Wednesdays?
Monday through Friday. Every day.
Okay. Yep. So just tune in Monday through Friday. Yeah,
I do that.
I know he does. But just tune in Monday through Friday with his stuff. Keep an eye on our stuff. You follow us on Instagram, Twitter, all that. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks, Zach.
I appreciate it.
We'll see you guys.